like we're settled in. Agenda item 15 is consideration of approval of an agreement between the Mesquite Regional Business, Inc., MRB, and the City of Mesquite for economic development services and other matters properly related thereto. Mr. Baker.
Mayor, Council, Aaron Baker, Interim Economic Development and Redevelopment Director. This evening we have before you an item that is a culmination of many months, almost a year-long process actually, worth of effort. I am here as well as representatives from Mesquite Regional Business. Before I had them get up and talk about many of their points they wanted to cover this evening, I wanted to kind of lay out a history for those who haven't maybe been involved or participated in this process up to this point. Like I said, it's been about a year long. This starts back on December 13th of 2011. Council directed staff to examine the possibility of privatizing economic development. Just a basic recap of that meeting was then interim city manager Kurt Sawyer brought the item forward due to some changes in personnel. We were having some shifts within different departments. As a consequence of that meeting, Councilmember Hafen made a motion to approve the formation of a steering committee made up of 5 members appointed by council from a list provided by city staff. Councilmember Rapson seconded that motion, passed 5-0. So that's what happened on December 13th. We jump forward to February 28th. Thank you. Council organized the Economic Development Technical Steering Committee. What happened during that meeting? There we go. Thanks, Mike. Was this during departmental reports? I reported back to the council based on the December motion from the meeting, providing names and tasks of this group. So the 3 main tasks the council gave the technical steering committee was to recommend a structure for an economic development organization, recommend funding sources, and recommend a mission statement. And they were to examine all possibilities, a spectrum of options from keeping it within the city to full for-profit organization, public-private, and everything else in between. The committee members were made up of people who have experience doing this. You have a list there available to you. Dave Ballwick, who has relocated his business a number of times, and he's a local manufacturer, so he provides great strength there. Ken Cook, who has professional life dealt with relocations. George Galt, who is professional economic developer. Rob Fuller, who also at one point in his career did economic development. Roger Ingebrigtsen, who's done it as well. Then we have Rebecca Meddy Burns with CSN, Darlene Montague, who's our local director here, and myself as the ex officio. So council directed us to move forward. So the technical steering committee had the first meeting on March 15th, 2012. So just to give you kind of, like I said, a brief synopsis of these meetings, they were public meetings that were properly noticed. The public was invited to attend and did attend. The committee selected a chair, George Galt, from among 6 members. We met 7 times. Like I said, the public did attend, did comment. Those comments were incorporated. And what happened was also reported on in the local media outlets. So everything was done as it should be when it's a council-directed process. Then we jump forward to June 12th, 2012. The Technical Steering Committee made a presentation to council, which I think bears some repeating here. They brought forward the idea of a mission statement for this organization. And they said this organization should grow value-added businesses. The way we recommend doing this is by forming a public-private partnership. The funding is public and private. It's a public-private partnership, with over time the private sector increasing its contributions. They discuss criteria for the solution, best practices both regionally and nationally, real-world parameters of what can really be borne by an organization, what can be paid for, what can't, what is Mesquite capable of, and certainly taking into consideration the strengths and existing organizations and programs. So with that, they came up with what is called a Mesquite-centric solution. So small working board, contract services, professional staff, 501c6, and a mission of growing value-added businesses. This is nothing new. This is things you've seen before. But as part of this discussion, there was a discussion about role clarity, who was going to do what. And I just wanted to bring this up again tonight, just as a refresher. Talked about the sustainability role and the role that the Chamber of Commerce can have in supporting and strengthening existing businesses here in the community. This group is not a detractor from the Chamber of Commerce, rather a support, in fact, a stream of possible new members. The growth role being by this newly formed organization, quality of life, the CDC, the governing role, the City of Mesquite taking a proper role in providing policy and direction and quality of life that it's within its purview. And certainly allowing other organizations and groups to continue doing what they do well right now. Thank you. So, also the meeting was, the implementation schedule was discussed. So if you could advance, please. These basic steps were outlined of council accept, why you advance one? So that step was taken care of. A council accepted recommendations and sunset of the technical steering committee on June 12th. Next. The volunteers created a private company and recruited a volunteer board. That is correct as well, that it has happened. I think you saw those materials in your packets. Mesquite Regional Business has incorporated in the state of Nevada. They have a City of Mesquite business license. And I think it's important to stress at this point as well, this is all done by volunteers. In fact, they've paid out of their own pocket. They haven't come to us and said, hey, can you pay for our incorporation fee? Can you pay for these other things we're doing? They've done it themselves. Next slide, please. And then the board drafted a performance-based agreement for council's consideration. That's what you have before you this evening. So this is kind of where we are on the implementation schedule. The next steps, if this is approved this evening, would be to hire professional and support staff. Obviously, they can't go out and recruit not having an agreement in place. And there's a January 1 target date of starting. Next slide. Okay, so this is some things that came out of the June 12th meeting, the motion. Councilmember Litton made the motion to do the following. It was seconded by Councilmember Hayfin. They received the presentation from the committee, provide direction to the committee regarding implementation of the recommendations by moving forward in selection of a board and applying for the 501c6 status, funding pending, and sunset the technical steering committee. That motion passed 4-1. And the motion gave staff and the committee the direction to proceed, the needed direction, quite frankly. And as we talked about the implementation schedule, much of that has been done, and that's why they're back here tonight. Since the June meeting, at that June meeting, a decision was made that a public-private partnership is the best vehicle for economic development in the city of Mesquite. What we're going to discuss tonight is how are we going to do that? Is this contract before you the best mechanism? So that's what we've been working on, is working out that how. So we've been working with those committee members, trying to negotiate a performance-based agreement, which you have before you. Mesquite Regional Business, they've incorporated, attained a business license, and applied for IRS 501c6 status. They also have done a number of other things, which I don't want to steal their thunder. I'll let them cover those items. Just want to go over the performance-based agreement that you have in your packets. There are some pros and there are some cons, and I think it's important to be honest about both of them. One of them, number one, terms protect the taxpayer. These are public dollars, and it is important that we put in place certain checks and balances to protect the public interest. So there are specific performance measures and certain things within the contract that they are expected to do. It's not open-ended of, you go out and do economic development, and that's it. There are specific activities listed out in your agreement, and those are, in section 3. In addition, there's a termination clause built into the agreement that says if they are not performing, if they're not doing what you want, there is the ability to terminate this agreement. This agreement is not in perpetuity. There's a natural built sunset clause into the agreement. There's also a termination agreement that allows you to end it sooner than that. There are semi-annual reports that come in as well, where they have the opportunity to check in with you, inform you of what's going on, and you to provide direction if it's not going in a direction that you feel is in your best interest. Another one of the pros, and this is what was originally discussed back in December, it's allowed to function as a private business. There are certain regulations in place that only allow a public entity to do so much. With a public-private partnership, you can go another step further and function as a private business does, interacting with another private business. One thing I do want to say on this point, though, is one of the problems that can happen in some economic development organizations, which this problem actually solves, is when you have approvals and incentives under the same roof, it can get clouded, it can get gray. But when you separate out the recruitment and the incentives, it makes for a cleaner organization because no one financially benefits. So you can't say, oh, well, since you got this company here, this happened. You're not tying those two together. It's a separation of you go out and recruit, and the city still controls the incentives. Mesquite Regional Business is not asking to control the city's ability to assist or provide financial incentives to any business. That would still remain with the city. The agreement, in my mind, does not overreach, but it does maintain oversight. I think it's a delicate balance of, quite frankly, not reaching in and telling them how to do it, rather telling them what you want done and allowing them as the professionals to do it. And I think it's structured such that it allows them to do it and not fetter them. The objectives of this organization coincide with the region and the state. As the mayor is aware, Las Vegas Regional Economic Development Council, the old NDA, they are going through a changing process, and they have established new objectives, performance measures, by which everyone is going to be measured in the region. And the objectives of Mesquite Regional Business coincide with those. As we mentioned, separates approval from incentives and allows for confidentiality, always a ticklish issue on the public side. A real con is that it is not a city organization. If that's something that you feel strongly about, that it should be under the umbrella of the city, it's not. It is a private business. And as a result, there is loss of some control. And that's why, that's one con. But like I said, I feel like on the pro side, it does allow still the proper amount of control. So, next slide. Just to give an overview of historic funding patterns within the department. As you see on this, and it was included in your packet, discusses previous year's budgets, and the FTEs are full-time equivalents, so number of employees. So you see, historically, for anywhere from 1.5 to 0.75 people, we've spent, on average, $245,000. Mesquite Regional Business is coming in with a proposal for, on average, $161,000. Now, fiscal year 12-13, you may be looking at that and seeing that they are asking for 95. That's because it'd only be half of the fiscal year. And this evening, we are not asking you to approve all these years, future years. Those will be handled in each budget cycle. Rather, it is for the remainder of this fiscal year, the 95,000. So, next slide. There are checks and balances built in as well to the funding as it's dispersed in Section 4 of the agreement. I don't want to bore you to tears, but I do want to show that these are dispersed in semi-annual payments, and there are certain requirements of things they must provide, including financial statements, vouchers, and upon request, the city does have right to audit their books. Eligible expenses detailed, and non-eligible expenses as well. And the agreement does not guarantee funding at certain levels. It is a year-to-year decision still. So, with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. Also, George Gall is here, the chair, and he I think has some items he would like to cover with you.
Okay.